Okay, let me start again. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today at our webinar. This is the second webinar that we're actually hosting or co-hosting with Confiance Administrative Solutions. They are a wholly owned subsidiary of Stratafin, and Willie will be able to give some insight into what they do in a moment. But today what we'll be talking about is what to look out for when engaging electricity resellers. So as you know, we've got our head of operations from Confiance Administrative Solutions, Hendrik Brits, and Hendrik holds a BCom law degree and has been involved with local municipalities for over 20 years. He's worked as a town secretary and manager of corporate services within various municipalities. He has served as the town secretary for Heidelberg municipality and as executive manager for corporate services for Lesedi municipality. We also have Hein Bredenkamp. He is the head of municipal services at Confiance Administrative Solutions, and Hein comes with an extensive legal background as well as a municipal career spanning over 30 years. Hein, he holds a B. Luris degree and was the head of legal at Merifong municipality for over 25 years. So he is very well versed in the municipal areas. And then obviously we've got Willie, who is the CEO of Stratafin. He is the face of Stratafin and the main speaker of most of our webinars. And Willie has practiced as a property attorney for over 20 years. He was involved in sectional title management for over 8 years, where he's dealt with various municipal bills and interacted extensively with the local municipalities. And really started Stratafin in 2014 with the goal of assisting body corporates with their funding without catching them in a debt trap. So just a bit of admin for today before I hand over to Willie to introduce Confiance. We are busy recording this session, so please, you will be able to view it after the fact. We will send out the recording after the webinar. Please send any questions you have during the course of the webinar, and we will try and answer them during the webinar. We've got a session at the end where we will be answering some questions, that kind of thing. So I'm going to be handing over to Willie to continue.
Thanks, Daniela. Yeah, quickly, just a bit about Confiance. Stratafin started Confiance with the aim to assist body corporates that require administrative services. And we're not talking about normal managing of sectional title schemes, but specifically schemes that require the appointment of an administrator in terms of Section 16 of the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act. So Confiance was set up to act as an administrator, and we assist various bodies corporate now with that service, where we run the full service in Confiance, from issuing levy statements on a monthly basis, making all decisions in terms of the court orders and so forth, and then also dealing with the municipal accounts. So from dealing with these schemes that required administrators to be appointed, we found that most of these schemes, the problem was with their municipal accounts, and that they require specific and specialist knowledge and expertise. And as such, Hendrik and Hein was brought on board to assist with this function. We can say that we have tried many other service providers in the industry, but in general they charge a percentage of the amount written back, and we found, and I will have a chat about that a bit later on, but we found that that is an ineffective way of dealing with the problem. In many instances these schemes never had that money, and to then charge them to get something written back at a percentage, it just placed a further burden on them. And as such, we decided to set up a business that would actually charge in accordance with a tariff that is based on an hourly tariff, and is a far more reasonable fee at the end of the day in respect of that. And that is how Confiance came into existence, and I think it is a service that we can now offer not only to schemes that are under administration, but schemes in general throughout the country. We've also built an extensive analytic tool to analyze accounts over a long period or extended periods. So from say 2002 up to current, it will then analyze those accounts and check that all the amounts charged and so forth was done correctly, and we can do that in a manner of a day or so. We can run all these systems if we've got all the different tariffs for all the different municipalities. Obviously, as we said in our previous webinar, those differ. So if we don't have the tariffs for that specific municipality, we will first have to load it, get it loaded, and then we can run the system, and then we can tell you where the problems are. So that's what we do at Confiance. So without then going further into that, I'm going to give over to Hendrik. Or was it, sorry, Hein, it's you. Hein, you will then start with back to basics.
Thank you, Willie, and welcome to everyone. Thank you very much. We noticed that there's such a lot of change happening in the electricity area. Even with a load shedding, that is not a welcome change, that we thought it is prudent to just have a quick look at dealing with electricity resellers. When we go back to basics, we see that this is the normal way that we've always been used to getting electricity. Where do we get electricity from? The bulk supply from Eskom or a municipality through bulk reticulation networks. Then we have a local reticulation that is in a complex or in a street or in an area that is installed by either the developer or the municipality. And from the electricity that is supplied, it then gets metered so that we can pay for the use of the electricity that we make use of. Metering is done through a conventional meter. Electricity billed after use. That is, meters are read on a monthly basis, and the charges are then reflected on the municipal invoice. What is coming to the fore much more currently is prepaid meters, where electricity units are purchased before use, and this charge does not reflect on the municipal account. It is possible that a fixed monthly charge may show on the invoice, and the prepaid meter can be supplied either by the municipality, by the council, or by Eskom, if that is the supplier in the area, or it can then be supplied by an independent electricity supplier or electricity reseller. That is the basic issue that we have. Daniela, if we can move to the next slide. Then the question becomes, who can sell legally? Who can legally sell electricity? Electricity basis is that we've got at the top of the food chain, we have NERSA, the National Electricity Regulator of South Africa. This is the body that is charged with regulating the generation and supply of electricity, and it also provides licenses for the distribution of electricity. We then have the licensed supplier that currently gets most of the electricity from Eskom, and the licensed supplier in a specific area can be either a municipality or it can be Eskom. In the recent past, provision has been made for supply by an unlicensed operator that is registered with NERSA, generating up to a maximum of 100 megawatt of electricity. If your generation capacity goes over 100 megawatt, then you must become a licensed supplier, and that process is currently underway. In South Africa, we see that Eskom is making strides in getting some of these independent suppliers off the ground. The supply of, or then the selling of electricity can also be done by a reseller that is registered with NERSA and that have a service delivery agreement with a licensed distributor. So your reseller must have a service delivery agreement with either Eskom or with the municipality that is the licensed reseller in that specific area. And the reseller must also be registered with the municipality. We have wall-to-wall municipalities in South Africa currently, so there is not one little footprint on South African soil that is not under the jurisdiction of a municipality. This new supplier that we speak of that can generate up to 100 megawatt of electricity, this is a supplier that can supply electricity in their own, for their own use, for their own generation, or they can supply directly to an end user. So this is a new animal that is still very new in the block, and that we will see how that pans out. When we go to the a bit of a legal process, a reseller is a person or entity that trades in electricity as a commercial activity. That is, it buys electricity and then sells it on, but it is not licensed by NERSA. The reseller will buy in bulk from Eskom or the municipality using a bulk supply point and then on-sell the electricity to end users who have individual meters, and in so doing is making a profit in the process of reselling of electricity. Daniela, thank you. Resellers have a definite space. They are a necessity in our current electricity supply process in the country. And we find that in the municipalities that are distributing electricity, that and this we are basically talking of the major cities, Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni, Tshwane, currently here, but this is happening all over South Africa in all the municipalities, is that the city or the municipality is the licensed distributor of electricity in the specific area, and then the electricity supplied by the municipality may be resold under certain circumstances. There are specific conditions that are set for the reselling of electricity. The major issue that we find is that electricity may not be resold for more than the charge that is determined by either the municipality, or if Eskom is a supplier in that area, the charge determined by Eskom for that specific area. And we find that in legislation, specifically Schedule 2 of the Electricity Regulations Act. This schedule determines that if you want to resell electricity for a tariff higher than what determined by the municipality, you must then be a licensed distributor, licensed by NERSA, and specifically the bylaws of each municipality also provide that there may not be a charge higher than that charged by the municipality.
So Hein, if I can just jump in here, if I understand correctly, does that mean that if I have a prepaid meter, that tariff on the prepaid meter should legally be the same as the tariff that I would pay to the council under general circumstances where I would then purchase my electricity directly from the council or directly from Eskom?
Yes, that is 100% correct, Willie. That is the legal situation that we have.
Are there certain circumstances where one would be able to charge additional fees, for example, a access fee or admin fee or something like that?
Yes, there are specific, some of the municipalities, for example, Ekurhuleni, make specific provision for a reseller charge, that there may be a reasonable amount that will be agreed between the reseller and the scheme for a charge for the provision of the electricity. That will be an invoicing charge or a specific charge, but your electricity charge itself may not be higher than what the electricity charge will be, that will be charged by the municipality.
Is that what we see in the market?
Well, that might be the situation. The legal situation is the legal situation. What I think, what we can also just note for interest sake, and what will be a reasonable amount that is agreed between the reseller and the scheme. That is not determined, but we have such a lot of legislation currently in place that provide for that, that we must make sure that our charges that we levy is not unreasonable. We've got all this legislation protecting consumers, and I think that's a good thing that is in place so that consumers are treated fairly. What we can also note for interest sake just is that municipalities are currently disputing the areas where Eskom is selling electricity directly. We find in more especially in the smaller municipalities, the local municipalities, that there are areas where Eskom was traditionally the service provider and municipalities have never provided services in those areas. So that is a process where Eskom continued to be the electricity supplier, the license supplier. But we also have the maybe interesting fact that large areas, in example, Sandton. Did I get lost, Willie?
We can still hear you, Hein.
Yeah, I think we lost Stratafin for a minute. So I'm going to proceed. Guys, Stratafin is just off the air. We are currently in, Stratafin is coming back and they are the host again. Thank you very much.
Hein, if I may just interject there, just for our listeners and audience, we are experiencing load shedding at the moment, so we may experience some connectivity issues.
All right, thank you very much. I see Stratafin is back, but just to complete this, that municipalities under the leadership of Salga are currently driving a case that they should be the sole supplier of electricity in all municipal areas. For example, so that Eskom, who is currently supplying in areas in Midrand and also large areas in Sandton, would not continue to supply. This is a case that is still developing, and I don't think that we are really able to really express ourselves on the capacity and capability of municipalities supplying all areas in South Africa. I think if you can just maybe go to the next slide. Thank you very much. A continuation of topic 2.
Yes, indeed. When a body corporate specifically is looking at achieving or attaining prepaid metered services, one must first look at the infrastructure that is available at the schemes and or buildings or their premises. If the infrastructure is of such a nature that it can indeed accommodate prepaid metering, then one must look at the various types of prepaid metering that is available. Top of the range is obviously smart meters that are remotely read and controlled, and they work very well in practice. You get meters that are accessible and inaccessible by owners. What do we mean by that? When a meter is accessible by an owner, the unit itself is installed in the body corporate unit in the dwelling, and they then would, upon payment of their amount for electricity, then punch in a certain code that would allow the meter then electricity again. You get inaccessible units where the owners would have no contact with the control unit at all. They would simply pay their dues for electricity and or water, and the meter would then allow the service to be utilized again. Resellers can obviously terminate the supply of power to the end user, but only on conditions that are the same for Eskom or the municipality who may terminate supply. And one must be careful here of not only case law, but our legislative framework, that is not violated. You cannot simply switch off somebody's electricity unless it's part of an agreement or management or conduct rules, or it is part of a legislative framework, for example, where a unit is under administration and you have a court order to that effect already. When you charge customers for disconnections, legal fees, interest fees, phone calls, all the debt collection actions, one must also comply to the legislation that govern these charges. And that is very important, because often prepaid metering is used as a tool to leverage the payment of especially arrears and debt. I'm specifically thinking of the application of the National Credit Act, our Debt Collectors Act, and several others. So the tool that prepaid meters allow you is a very convenient one, both for the trustees and the body corporate as a whole, and for the consumers, because a consumer then can determine how much of the utility service they can budget every month and that they want to use. If they want to top up, they have that opportunity to do so. And as I say, prepaid meters can also be used as a control mechanism. What do we do in the case?
Hendrik, can I just jump in here quickly? Sure. Regarding meters as a control mechanism, we're specifically talking about the utilizing of water and electricity meters or prepaid water and electricity as a methodology to actually collect your levies, as I understand correctly. So you would load your levies or your arrears or whatever onto that, and an owner will not be able to get access to electricity or water depending on what prepaid meter is installed until such a time as that levy has been paid or the arrear has been paid and so forth, if I understand correctly.
That is indeed correct. That gives you the option. Certain systems do, other systems don't. It depends on whether it's smart meters, accessible, not accessible, and the type of meter that will be installed.
And you will only be able to do so, if I can then just continue and ask you then, you can only do so if you've got a court order, or can you do so at any stage?
No, not at all. One must follow a legislative process, and you cannot simply disconnect the services of anybody unless you have a court order or it is contained in a specific agreement. Not a tacit agreement, a specific agreement.
Okay, and then just specifics. I mean, I've got a question here that says, how do you determine that the supplier is charging over the regulated tariff, and where do you report it? And then it continues, it says, can the reseller charge a vending fee of 8% plus VAT, as well as a monthly fixed charge of 190 Rand per unit in a complex? So it's very specific, but I would think that the answer is the reasonableness answer, isn't it?
Yeah. Is it reasonable? That's the first test. And obviously, does the electricity or water tariff that is being charged, does that conform to the maximum allowed by the licensed distributor, whether it's Eskom or the municipality? We do, in fact, cover disputes just in the next bullet point, where we want to make sure that people understand that there is a bit of a process to follow when you have a dispute like this. You first need to raise the complaint with a reseller, making them aware of what the maximum tariffs would be that is allowed. Then the additional costs that are now raised as part of the complaint, that you need to go back to the initial agreement between the body corporate and this vendor to ensure whether this was reasonable, whether it was agreed to, and does it conform to all kind of legislation. The legislation I'm specifically referring to is firstly our schedule that Hein had quoted previously, the Electricity Regulation Act. And then one must look in terms of the current trend is that a reasonable charge to recover charges. I mean, are these charges in fact real? So yes, it's difficult to express an opinion on a question like that if you do not have all the background detail. So context is very important, and we can certainly look at that perhaps after the webinar to assist in answering more specifically. So if you approach the reseller and you do not get any joy in that regard, then you would be able to go to your distributor and raise the query there. And after that, you raise a query with NERSA, even if you're not having any joy with your distributor as well. So it is a bit of a process, but yes, you do have recourse. That's all I can say about that.
Stratafin is
Sorry
back.
about that.
No,
We are back
Stratafin is
again.
Just on the conclusion of Hendrik's answer, Willie, I think as Hendrik then stated, this would be basically a case-by-case matter that one will have to look at.
And Hein, this is the type of things that you guys go and investigate and make sure that the correct tariffs have been charged and so forth, because the tariffs also, like we said on the previous webinar, if I remember, differs from municipality to municipality, and there's also different scales involved at every municipality. So one needs to determine where the scheme was registered, what was the bulk supply to the scheme, and so forth. So there are various aspects that are taken into consideration when you need to determine what the tariff or the correct tariff of the scheme should be.
That is correct. That is 100% correct.
Right. Okay,
this is where the fun starts, Willie.
Okay.
Because surely sectional title owners and trustees need to be very wary of what they may or may not do.
Yeah, correct. And it's very difficult for owners to actually know exactly what tariff they should be on, and what the reseller is entitled to charge and so forth. So one actually need to go and have a look at those contracts. Like you said, you need to go and have a look at what one would expect to be reasonable. And then you need to determine, obviously, what is the correct tariff for that specific scheme, because from scheme to scheme that can also differ because of the supply that is fed into that scheme, the provision that was made for additional electricity to that scheme. So it's got a higher probable feed, but although it's not using it, or possible feed, and as such it will sit on a higher tariff and so forth. So all these things need to be investigated properly. And one can't just go and pay somebody 500 Rand or 1,000 Rand to go and reduce the bill and tomorrow it's coming back. You need to investigate all these things. You need to make sure that all the correct processes are followed and it's on the right tariff and so forth. Just regarding what is required to install prepaid meters, obviously Prescribed Management Rule 29.3 requires that you need a special resolution by owners to make a decision for the installation of the prepaid meters, water and electricity. And there's also a special period that notice has to be given, a period of 60 days that is required in terms of prescribed management rule 29, to make sure that owners have sufficient time to digest the decision and to go through all the necessary documentation and so forth. So even here, we see that it's not the normal time period that is required for a special resolution of 30 days, but that a longer period is required because of the amount of information that needs to be gone through and what you need to make sure that you know what's going on.
It's an extra special resolution.
Yeah, it's an extra special resolution, yeah. So, but it's just a special resolution. So you need 75% of a quorum to actually vote in favor of that. And then we all know that if a resolution has not been attained, a special resolution or a unanimous resolution, then CSOS can be approached by 25% of the owners of a scheme, and they can then plead their case to CSOS, and CSOS can then make a decision regarding that. So that it can also follow that route if you want to implement a special resolution for prepaid meters.
Willie, we got a nice question here. Is it possible for, say, 2 or 3 units in a body corporate to install prepaid meters, or is it an all or nothing?
So what we see in general is that people do install private prepaid meters, but those prepaid meters are not real prepaid meters in the real sense of the word. It is a prepaid meter and that is the type that Hendrik was talking about earlier on, where it sits in the unit and the numbers are punched in that you get when you purchase the electricity, and then electricity is supplied to that section. And that normally takes place where you've got rented units. So what you then get is that the tenant pays upfront for his electricity. That money is then paid over to the landlord, and the landlord paid in accordance with the bulk meter or bulk meter reading of the scheme. So 2 owners can't put in their own meters, but they can put in private meters. But if you are the owner staying in that unit, there's no advantage for you to go and spend money on a meter and then pay an admin fee or whatever is a reasonable fee on top of that. So it will be cheaper for you to actually just have your own bulk meter or bulk meter reading on a monthly basis and pay that. So there's no advantage that lies in that for you, except if you rent out your unit, because then you get your tenant to pay upfront for the electricity usage. Okay.
Yes, you're onto how our experts can assist you.
Okay, so how can we at Confiance assist you? So we can take your municipal accounts that is in arrears. We can then analyze it through our experts that are here. We can go and determine the correct tariff that is required. We can negotiate for that tariff to be changed. We analyze these accounts properly, give a proper report on that account that has been analyzed. We enter into payment negotiations with the various municipalities. It is properly done through the proper channels. The proper paperwork is in place that proves that negotiations took place, and that an agreement was reached in respect of a write-off or a payment plan or whatever the situation might be. Then where there are no funds available, that's where Stratafin comes in. We can finance that, so we can make money available to the body corporate that's then paid over a period of time as a fixed term loan, or if there's a real levy debt, Stratafin can purchase that arrear levy debt and then give the body corporate money in that way to then enter into this agreement. So yeah, so that is how our experts can help, and how we at Stratafin can also assist with that. I mean, we have seen many schemes, especially in the inner cities, that have owed millions of rands to bodies corporate. I've seen some of the chairpeople of those schemes here today, where these schemes have owed millions of rands, and yes, negotiations is then entered into with the council, where we then agree. I mean, there's examples where schemes owed 19 million rand and agreements were made, 5 million rand where we've made an agreement where certain amounts are written off. So yeah, so various examples that we have done. And in general, if one would utilize the guys in the industry, they would charge anything between 10 and 25% of that amount that's written off. And we have seen a lot of those are not real write-offs. It is somebody that knows somebody at the council, a bribe is paid, and amount is written off on the system. And you then pay your 10% or your 25%, depending on what your agreement is with that person. And then 6 months or 9 months or a year later, this amount then reappears on the statement, and then the person just says, well, it's not my fault, I can't help that, it's just what happened. So one would be very wary of that type of fee arrangements, because there's an incentive for people to actually get somebody to just write something off, and that is going to come back to bite the body corporate again. So be very, very careful and make sure, if you enter into an arrangement like that with somebody like that, that you've got the necessary paperwork in place from the council that actually states and has got the right signatures on there, to make sure that it is the right person that is authorized to enter into those negotiations and agreements with the body corporate. So yeah, so it's a very dangerous field, and one needs to make sure that you are dealing with reputable people when you do this. At Confiance, we charge a fixed fee, so we charge an hourly rate. We also charge a fee for an analysis, so we will first analyze it, charge an analysis fee, and then tell you this is what it will cost to go through this process, depending on what is found from that analysis. And yeah, then you can decide if that is where you want to go and go through that process. As I said, we've had many examples. I mean, recently we've had an amount of 1 million rand, just over 1 million rand, that was incorrectly charged on the account that was written back. 900,000 rand was written back on a sewer account. We checked that up to 2006, so very far back. An amount on the electricity was also written off, and it was all done in a legal fashion with the correct signatures, and it's not going to come back because it was done in a proper manner. So yeah, that is how we can help. But let's have a look at some of the questions that we've got.
I think let's start with the questions that have been posed here regarding Willie's question. Some prepaid companies propose and use a wallet type system that incorporate the levy and the electricity and the water prepaid. The owner is then required to make payments to this wallet for electricity, water, and the levy, and top up the water and electricity amounts as required. If they don't pay the levy amount, is it legal for the body corporate to first take any money paid into the wallet for the levy amount, thus leaving no amounts of credit for the prepaid electricity, water, etc., and essentially cutting that off the owner?
So I can just answer that. From our point of view, we believe it is not legal to follow that unless you have a court order to that effect. So where Confiance have been appointed as administrator, that is actually one of the matters that we discuss in our application, and we require, because it's a very convenient method of collecting levies and making sure that arrears are paid. So we would, where a scheme is in huge financial trouble and they can't pay the council, we would include that in our court application, and we would ask that to become part of the court order. So unless it is in our court order, we will not apply a wallet system. but if it is included in the court order, where the court has then granted us that right to include it and to recover the arrears and to then pay over to the city in that way, we will do that. But if we don't have an order, we will not do so, and we believe that by doing so, that is just spoliation in a simple way, or in a more complex way, but it remains spoliation by refusing somebody electricity and access to electricity.
And then another question, I think we get that quite a lot, so it's quite an interesting one. The managing agent uses a certain reseller and is receiving a 5% to 10% kickback from the reseller for introducing them to the trustees and to install smart prepaid meters. Is this allowed, as it is not general knowledge to the owners of the units in the complex?
I don't know if I must answer that, or I'll start, and then Hein and Hendrik, you guys can jump in as well. In general, in our law, if somebody receives money without the knowledge of the people that pays it, so you receive a kickback or a fee or whatever, and it's undisclosed, then that would be frowned upon by our courts. It's not something that is done, and one should never receive kickbacks from any supplier. I think the Property Practitioners Act is now very, very strict on that. And entering into an agreement like that will actually cause the managing agent and that person that pays the kickback to actually repay and also be liable for fines. So it's a secret commission in general, and secret commissions are not allowed in our law. Hendrik, anything else that you want to add to that?
Well, besides that, it could possibly be civilly recovered if the rest of the owners were paying that, not knowing about this arrangement because they had not pre-agreed to that. So very definitely that is, it's a troublesome some situation that individuals have created for themselves in their greed, most probably, but I would not venture into that. It's really dangerous and bad for reputation.
Yeah. Hendrik, is the refusing to sell prepaid electricity to an end user, is that seen as a termination?
That depends on the agreement or a court order. But one must be very careful when we address this matter, in that there is often an expectation that the user must be able to access utilities. In a prepaid environment, that is a contractual environment. And the contract, well, basically says that you first pay and then get. So if there is a court order or a pre-agreement that levies would be raised through the prepaid system, clearly then, if you are not fully paid up, that can be the situation, and it can happen that if you haven't paid the full amount that was due for your levies, special levies, whatever else, then the amount that is pre-required for you to have access to utilities is unfortunately not covered, and therefore it is not really terminating your services. It is part of your tacit agreement, or express agreement, that you must first pay those levies or tariffs before you may access utilities. So it is not wrong per se, but it also have a pre-requirement of court orders or a pre-agreement in that regard. Ladies and gentlemen, it would appear to me that load shedding and its effect is wreaking havoc. I'm not sure if our team is still live.
We're back again. I'm so sorry, everyone. This internet is an absolute nightmare at the moment. I can't believe it.
I suspect we lost Hein a while ago,
Yes, he's going to be coming back shortly. Yeah, we're back. You were almost having to do this whole thing by yourself, Hendrik.
Well, I wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
The subject is one that we encounter almost daily now.
Yes,
So
yes.
we do have a lot of questions in this regard. And
It's so
it must
ironic
be
that we
made
speak
clear.
about electricity and we have none, eh?
Yeah, yeah.
I
It's
wonder
a
if
bit
you
of a
can-
challenge.
So Hendrik, I'm sorry if we missed it, but oh no, I think we've lost Hendrik now. Okay, Hein, you're back again. One last question. Can disconnection or reconnection fees lawfully be charged by resellers?
The answer is yes, if it's pre-agreed. If it's lawful, if it's reasonable, yes. But if none of the above, then not.
Yeah. I see Paul just sent us a message to say, did you pay your prepaid? Clearly not.
We have an
So we're running on a
expectation here,
huge
Mr.
generator, but the problem is the moment that the power goes off from Eskom, I think the towers also go off. So even if you, and we're on fiber, so even if you're on fiber, it creates a huge problem. So electricity is a problem not only in schemes, it's a problem everywhere in this country.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions that anyone wants us to answer while we're here? I see that there's a couple more that have come in. Okay, with regards to Hendrik's answer, a pre-agreement between who to include the levy. Is it sufficient for a body corporate agreement signed by trustees, or does it require a conduct rule change for the scheme?
So I think I will jump in here. I would think, we've not actually seen this, but in general, it was in terms of resolutions that was taken at the AGM, and it was then a special resolution where that was included. But I do think that the appropriate way is to have a change of conduct rules. We've seen it in respect of just agreements at a body corporate level or AGM level, where that agreement, where the vote was taken by a special resolution and it was included. We have not seen any CISOS matters on this. But I do think that at the end of the day, CISOS would require a change of rules. So therefore, one will need to go through that. If CISOS will allow a rule change to that effect, I don't know. I don't know if Zerlinda is here. She's more the specialist in respect of rule changes. So I don't know if they will allow it. Just see quickly if Zerlinda, okay, she's not in today. But in general, yeah, that is something that we can also speak about later on in another webinar with her and I. But definitely, we would think that a rule change is required. In our case, where we deal with Confiance, it is definitely something that we have as part of our court order and application when we approach a court to place a body corporate under administration in terms of Section 16.
Perfect. And then we just wanted more clarity. Can a prepaid meter company charge 8% management fee on the amount that the user pays for their power, i.e. they get 8% less units because this fee is included?
Yeah, I think the answer that Hendrik gave earlier on, it depends if it's reasonable. I do not think to charge 8% on top of that will be reasonable. I think one will be able to charge a fee, a set fee, which is a reasonable fee, like 150 Rand or 200 Rand, but to charge a percentage on top of your usage, I do not think will stand the test of reasonableness. I think that becomes very expensive, and as such, I think it won't stand that test. So I don't think that will work. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Are there any other questions? Otherwise, we've gone through all the information that we wanted to get through to give to you. Oh, yeah. Paul, if a sectional title installs or sets up a solar infrastructure, due to the suggested system, will only supply about 50% of historic usage demand per month. To ensure fair usage of the solar energy supplied, would meters be an option to charge users on the solar?
Well, we are seeing that schemes are now bringing in their own solar infrastructure, and obviously there is a cost involved. And if that is a service that is rendered by the body corporate and there's a cost involved, then it needs to be budgeted for, and that budget will have to go through the AGM and will have to be voted on. So that is then dependent on owner participation and vote in respect of their budget to determine if they can do so, and if they can. And one will also have to go and have a look if is it necessary, if it's a luxury improvement. So there's also all those aspects that needs to be taken into consideration that deals with normal decision-making process in a body corporate and an AGM.
I think just on that point, installation of solar is in fact no more than a normal capital project for a body corporate, and it must be dealt with in that regard. The benefit of having the perceived free electricity is not so much there, because the equipment is quite expensive and it does come at a cost then which must be then repaid. So the utility of free electricity is not as free as one would perceive.
Correct. Thank you, guys. Sorry for all the troubles of today. We've had our own electricity troubles, and we will approach the court for spoliation order against Eskom shortly.
With the rest of South Africa?
With the rest of, let's do a class action and see if we can do that.
Okay.
Thank
Fantastic.
you.
Thank
we
you so
really
much,
appreciate
everyone.
your participation.
Thanks. See you soon. Bye.
Thank you.